It is Two Guys Garage Podcast. My man Kevin Bird, I am Willie B. Fired up today. We're talking Godzilla. And normally when Kevin and I are talking Godzilla, it's who would win? Godzilla, King Kong, Mantra, cool stuff like that. No, when we're talking Godzilla, man, it's about that crazy Ford platform that's just, dude, it's stirring everything up. And man, is it a hell of an answer to that LS platform, huh?
Yeah, man, it raises a lot of questions. It raises a lot of opportunity for, what's kind of that next engine swap, right? An LS just swapped the world, right? Everything's got an LS in it. And for anybody who's been in the dark for a while, Ford just came out with their Godzilla platform, 6.8, 7.3 liters. So it is basically an LS on steroids. We're talking about big cubic inches. So, I mean, you can make huge power just naturally aspirated. And then you start to blow on it a little bit. And wow, the numbers should just be like falling off a log.
It is amazing because, we've seen way too many, tried and true tests on that LS platform. It's legit. There's a reason it's in so many applications, but very smart on behalf of Ford. Because let's be honest, albeit an incredible platform, we all love how they've, manipulated the valve train in Coyotes now, and you have, overhead cams, and you eliminate a lot of that. However, it is a tough challenge to get that engine in so many platforms because it's just really wide. It's got a big footprint. So what they did is really answer the call to not only get something compatible and comparable to LS platform, but something that really has an unbelievable opportunity to expand. And I'm talking aftermarket, not just blowers, but heads, camshafts, valve trains. You see this engine develop and watch the thing unfold. It's already making big numbers on stock rotating assemblies and stock, components. Imagine what this thing is going to do when you start really leaning on it and leaning into it with aftermarket support, with blowers, with everything that's out there.
Yeah, we've had Brian Wolf on. He was one of the big cheeses at Ford before he retired. That was really influential on making that engine happen, right? And getting the bones and the architecture in there because he's a performance guy. You go back and check out some of our old podcasts. Brian Wolf has been kind of one of the old 5-liter, the old 5.0 Mustang, Fox body, drag race kind of forefront guys. So he's got drag racing, he's got racing in all flavors in his blood. And he tried to bake in all those kind of goodies, thinking about what this Godzilla platform could do outside of a stock F-150 or F-250, whatever. So, we've had him on just talking about engine development, but we want to talk to, a buddy of mine, Doug DeLong from Well Sorted. He's been out there actually being on the forefront of installation and different applications, because that's what we really care about, is not buying a brand new truck with the engine in it, but picking one up out of a salvage yard or from Ford Performance or whatever else and stuffing it in something else and making it ultra cool.
Yeah, man. I mean, you think about the cubic inch possibility alone, and that gets a lot of people excited, a lot of people happy. You add on top of it all the aftermarket support in the form of, blowers, twin screw, hair dryers, turbos, nitrous, and all of a sudden, man, dude, things could get real fun real quick with this particular platform. We're going to take a quick break. We'll come back. We're going to pick his brain about that, about where the potential is. And I'm not really going to see a resurgence in Fox body Mustangs again with this Godzilla platform on the racetrack, am I? We lived that nightmare so many years in a row. But I got to
get away from it, man. Can't get away from it.
It's coming back. And it's just a matter of time before those blue oval boys came up with something that would hang with that Gen 3 Hemi and that LS. Yep.
That's right. You got an LS? We got an LS with more cubic inches.
Right. Doug, you got to love that old school sort of, well, mine's bigger, I win kind of thing, right? It's definitely
the old phrase. There's no replacement for displacement.
Yeah, it's prominent with this thing, man. Now, obviously, being on the sideline, hearing about this thing, rumors about this thing, when you first got your hands on it, were able to pick it apart a little bit. What was big surprises in your world? What was big kind of like improvements that you thought Ford had taken really with this platform? And where do you think it's going in the aftermarket world?
Well, I saw the headlines when the motor got launched in the F-250 pickup trucks. And then not too long after, when Ford came out and said, "Hey, we're going to put this as a crate motor," and it was like, "Huh, that's pretty cool looking." Started reading the articles and seeing the pictures, and my brain immediately started worrying because most of what we're doing is classic trucks, and I built a bunch of Toyotas, built a bunch of LS powered Toyotas, and done things like that. But I'm also sort of a Ford guy at heart, and I wanted a Bronco, and I saw that motor and I was like, all right, now's the time. Let's get on the bandwagon because, fundamentally it's a truck engine, right? It's got big displacement. It's got tons of torque. It is what you want to, pull a 6,000 pound truck down the road. And so I was like, hey man, we got to try one of these. So I found myself a Bronco, went out, got a motor, brought it in the shop, set it on the floor next to the Bronco and started figuring out what it was going to take because it looked like it was going to be a lot of fun.
Right. Now, when you say you went and got a Bronco, what year specifically? What kind of shape was it in? Tell us a little bit about how you started marrying these two together.
So I like the Gen 2s. The first full-size Bronco was in 1978, and 78, 79 is kind of a rare little run where it's a full-size Bronco.
Yeah.
It still has kind of square headlight, classic Denside Ford look. It's got a solid front axle instead of the twin tube beam stuff. So it's a neat little short run of trucks. So I found one. Actually, I was living in Buena Vista in Colorado, a little town, and a guy had one, a college kid, needed to sell it, make some money. So I snagged it out of his hands. And it's still in process because, when you own a shop, you rarely get to work on your own stuff. So I'm still working on it.
We all know that.
But yeah, so it's going to have Godzilla. It's going to have, a bunch of axle upgrades and suspension and lift and big tires and all the fun stuff. So it'll be pretty sweet whenever I get it finished.
So dimensionally, like we're all pretty familiar with an LS binocs. We've seen them in everything down to something as tiny as a Miata. Dimensionally, for anybody who hasn't put their eyes on or their hands on one, how does it stack up to an LS?
It's a little bigger.
Height-wise?
Yeah, so I had some LSs around and I kind of pulled tape, and then you can find dimensions on the internet now, exact measurements. But fundamentally, what I tell folks is it's a little bit wider because it's got a tall deck height. It's a long stroke motor. It's a little bit taller because it has a tall intake built for trucks and torque, and it's got a deep oil pan. So you've kind of got maybe 1 inch to 2 inches in kind of all directions. It's got the exhaust manifolds stick out a little bit further than like a block hugger style, but I think that's a problem that's going to be solved by the aftermarket in time here. And intakes are starting to come out, so there's a lot of options now to kind of squeeze the thing down. And I mean, I'm sure maybe you guys want to talk about it, but the Fox Body guys are all after this thing, trying to get it under the hood of Fox Mustangs and make it all fit.
Yeah, man.
They're pretty tight compared to a big old truck. It's a lot easier in my world.
All right. So when you saw it started peeling a couple layers apart, what about this engine was a big surprise to you? What was pretty expected when you started dissecting, this what they're calling, their next big platform, something they got a lot of heart and soul into it. It's one of the last few ICE engines they're ever coming out with. What was your overall feel of the design, the architecture, and potential of this particular platform?
I think it's a pretty neat engine. So when you look at it and you start to pick apart the subsystems, you'll see, I think that's just a culmination of a lot of lessons learned. Maybe the surprise was frankly kind of how easy it all came together. It's a brand new engine on the stage, right? There's no aftermarket support. Everything's kind of got to be figured out, but it frankly wasn't too bad to start to put the puzzle pieces together and go, how am I going to get this thing in a truck with the transmission and all that? So Ford kind of, I think, like everybody does, you take the things you see in your competitors, you take the things you learn on your own design, and you apply all that knowledge, and you make an engine that has a good oiling system, good breathing heads. It's got good flow and exhaust. It's got, good intake designed for a truck with all that torque. It's kind of just got all your boxes checked. So it's an awesome foundation. And then, some of the simple things, like it bolts right up to the automatic transmissions that bolt to the modular engine. So you immediately have all kinds of transmission choices you can put right behind it.
Nice.
So the old mods of 4.6s all the way through. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So the common choice right now is the 6-speed, the 6R80. You can also put the 10R80, the 10R140, the 6R140, all those transmissions that were in kind of basically all the 2010 and up pickup trucks up until now. All that stuff bolts right up to it.
Anything unique with like flex plates and torque converters and all that stuff? I mean, the bell housings bolt, but is the internal stuff connect to as well?
Yeah, the flex plate has worked on everything. The starter position is a little different, and you have to have the right starter and the right spacer plate depending on which transmission you're using. So you need to match your starter and your spacer to your trans. But the flex plate's been the same on all of them. The torque converters all work. The
Wow,
patterns are all the same. Everything just goes right
nice.
together.
All right, so we've got an engine and we've got several transmissions to choose from. But from there, what I imagine would be challenging with the Godzilla. When the LS came out, it was in so many different platforms. From the Pontiacs to the GM Chevrolets, you name it, Corvettes, Camaros, Cadillacs. It was everywhere. And if you think about it, it was already in vehicles, and so the aftermarket could jump in and start making intake manifolds and coils and you name it, and it just kind of worked their way down until they pretty much can make the entire engine without GM. But this engine, it's only in the Super Duties. So to get it in any sort of other vehicle, you have to swap it. Right? So it just seems like it's less prevalent of a vehicle, less opportunity if you're going to, let's say, do cams. Right? There's not 5 million vehicles out there that you could potentially sell cams for. It's only going to be the narrow kind of market where the people are doing the swaps. So I'm just wondering, how that
Right.
snowball is happening. If the big snowball is going to end up at the end, or if it's going to be kind of a small snowball with kind of niche in certain areas. But we've got engine and trans. So what else is the challenge there to start getting it in something else?
Yeah, so in my world, in the trucks, it hasn't been too bad because the intake manifold in the Super Duties is unique. It's tall with long runners, and the throttle body sort of points upward at like a 30-degree angle. We make that work under most of the truck hoods with just an elbow on it, and it's no problem. The car guys have needed lower intakes. So there's a couple people out there, like Brian Tooley Racing came out pretty early with a full billet CNC intake, and it's really nice. It's obviously quite expensive, and you hope that maybe somebody like Holley is going to come out in the future with a plastic version that's a little more cost effective for guys, right? Because it's like I think it's $6,000 intake, which is
Right.
out of the reach of a lot of guys.
Wow.
Ford Performance just released. Basically, it's a medium height intake. I'll call it. It's a little lower than the truck intake, and it has a forward facing throttle body. And so that gets away from the hood clearance issues for some of the car guys, and frankly, even some of the trucks we build, we may run that intake. So that's a biggie, and that it took a couple of years to get that out, and Ford has released it and shown it, but finally got it on the website I think a month ago. So that was a big step forward, and as I said earlier, if we get somebody like Holley or somebody else on board to make a couple plastic intakes, it'll be better. The market is kind of growing, I would say, steadily. It's not super fast, but every few months some new good parts come out. Holley did just release a front accessory drive
Yeah, I
system
saw
for
that.
it that has like a high
Yep.
AC. So you get some options now to fit it in a tight car or narrow frame rails. What else is key? Oil pans are a biggie. So we run the stock oil pan. It works in our lifted trucks, but the oil pan is deep. It's got the filter on one side. It's got the oil cooler on the other. So a lot of guys need a little better clearance, and they're running. I think 417 Motorsports has a kind of a low clearance wet pan, and then I think Brian Wolf, through his company Willis Performance, is selling a dry sump pan for it as well. So you can, if you're building a race car, you're building a hot street car, you can look at some of those
So
options.
how's that wet sump pan? Because I haven't seen the internals for quite a long time, so I'm pretty fuzzy on. Isn't there basically a drive shaft for the oil pump?
I haven't looked into the details of that pan. They have a remote filter mount on the side. So I think what they've done is kept the drive shaft, kept the oil pump, but packaged the filter somewhere else and taken the cooler off the other side, so the thing is a little bit narrower. And then they just kind of shrank the height on it so they can fit it in a low clearance car, closer to the ground.
Because most of the modern engines kind of went to a G rotor off the crankshaft, right? So it gets it out of the pan, right? We think about the old distributors that would drive, an oil pump down in the pan, right? But that's it. That's the one Gnorp that's down there taking up space other than holding oil. I believe this one runs maybe a chain or a belt down to a shaft that goes back to a pump. And the reason typically is you're forced, because of the crank nose diameter, to grow the G rotor out to be a certain diameter outside of that crank nose, and it just creates a lot more surface speeds and friction and drag. So I think Ford kind of put it internally with a drive to improve the efficiency of the pump. But again, I haven't been in that loop for quite a while, and I assume that might be a pretty tough challenge for cross members and steering linkages and stuff for certain applications.
Yeah, I think specifically for the Fox guys, they wanted a rear sump pan with fairly low clearance, so they kind of came up with that as the middle ground to not have to go full dry sump. And there's been Indy Power Products makes a pretty nice front end kit that redoes the whole thing. You take the water pump housing off, it all changes, and they integrate a bunch of this stuff. Again, it's all CNC billet. It's really nice stuff. It's not the cheapest stuff. So for the DIY guy, it's maybe not the best choice. But there's a couple options out there now between those pans. And that stock pan isn't bad. For any sort of truck application, it seems fine. It's just going to be some of the cars where it gets a little tight to fit that thing in.
Yeah, I'd like to see some of the Fox bodies and see what they've done to fit it into that application. Because, you figure if you fit into a Fox body, you're kind of on the way to fitting in a lot of stuff. But
yeah, from what I understand, it's tubular K member required. So they're dropping the factory K member, running tubular K members to get the thing in there, and then combining it with that pan, and it seems to work out.
Ooh, that'd be something else, man. Shed about 80 pounds probably in doing so, and picking up a lot more cubic inches, and something I think probably going to light that market on fire. So We're seeing so many people, companies, businesses excited about this. And I got to see, man, Doug, you made a big move in your life recently from out of here in Colorado all the way to hot Atlanta, baby. And that shows you a little bit as to your expectation of the car industry, trucks, and what's going on there. Man, you finding a big home there in the Atlanta market for this particular platform?
Well, so we build trucks for guys all over the country. So I am somewhat lucky that I can kind of live wherever I want, because my customers are coming from everywhere from Miami out to LA right now. So we have fun. We made the big move in January. Moving the shop cross country is a giant amount of work.
Oh, yeah.
It's gone well. We've got reset up here, new building, new people, and kind of rolling again, building a bunch of trucks right now, a bunch of these Ford trucks. We thought we would maybe move to Denver, but Atlanta won out because of families here. And, if you've been here, this is a great car town. Like, the car culture here is awesome. Has one of the biggest cars and coffees in the country, if not maybe the biggest. There's a bunch of really good, high performance shops. There's a bunch of race teams based out of here because the Road Atlanta track's right up the road. And, you got TV personalities like Finnegan and Fuller's here. And, so it's just a really kind of a cool car town. And, no offense, Kev, I think the weather's better than Detroit.
Yeah. I think weather just about anywhere is better than Detroit. Almost. So everything's been rolling good. You able to pull your clients, because they're all over anyway.
Yep.
You pull your clients with you. You're finding new talent there, because you got a bigger pool to work with than kind of up in the mountains in Colorado. So that's got to be good.
Yeah, that was one of the challenges. I loved where we lived. It was a tiny little town in God's country, but it's hard to get people out there, and even like suppliers, right? So I had to drive to Denver often to get powder coating done, blading done, machine shops, custom things, and it's 3 hours out to Denver, 3 hours back home, and that kills your day, right? So when you're trying to do this sort of really specialty work, you need a really good network of suppliers, and spending that kind of time on the road just wasn't really effective for what we were trying to do. So I knew I had to get to some sort of large metro area where I could tap into all those resources.
Well, I know this hurts, man, because I was just up in the area where you left, and God, everywhere I turned around, there was a cool-looking Scout laying in some dude's backyard, or an old FJ, and man, Colorado was rich in those old project trucks, and definitely somebody could do themselves a lot of justice, probably swinging in and snatching a bunch of those things up, but that's probably it's probably little secrets that we're telling now. But
yeah,
is Atlanta area a hot spot for trucks like you would expect? Something like you left, like Colorado. It's probably just as big, if not bigger, probably, right?
Yeah, it's bigger in a different way.
Right.
Colorado is all about kind of the big outdoor camping overlanding scene, right? So you see a ton of like Toyotas and stuff built out. Here, it's a little more the American, Ford and Chevy stuff, and a little less of that overlanding. And I mean, there's some big mud trucks, of course, but there's a lot of guys that are just sort of into lifted classic Fords and classic Chevys. And then there's all the young kids have the modern stuff with the 24-inch wheels and
yeah, man,
the light rims and all
Yeah,
that
baby,
stuff's
the
going on.
pavement prints. I got lights all over my drums, my wheels. I got it on everything.
Yeah,
uh,
exactly.
Straight up, man. It's like a big ass rolling 4x4 disco ball. But dude, they're writing checks, man. And God, it's amazing to see some of these trucks. It's like that thing has never seen an ounce of dirt, but wow, it sure is crazy built, insanely painted up, lighted up, and it must take a lot to clean it.
Yep.
So, do you think that that exploding truck market that you've been such a part of, you think it's going to continue? Because you see a lot of square bodies becoming more and more popular. You see a lot of you mentioned the '78 Bronco. They did build that one that for a couple years, but even on down the food chain a little bit into the '80s and the full size like OJ Bronco. Even those are starting to command a lot of money and a big swing in price and demand in those respected applications,
Yeah, absolutely. So the last truck we just finished was a '96 Bronco OJ style. This one was kind of a teal color, so not exactly OJ, but we did a Godzilla in that one. And the owner loves that truck. He's been wheeling it for a long time with its old 302, so it's a it's a whole new lease on life with a Godzilla under the hood. But yeah,
Yeah.
those trucks they're getting super popular. I've got lots of inquiries from guys with that generation of Bronco that want us to do the work. I just bought one, a pickup. So I bought a crew cab short bed, 1997. It's got the 460 big block, but I'm going to yank that out and stuff a Godzilla in it as kind of our shop truck and run around for hauling and towing and things like that. And I get compliments on it all the time. You drive around town and people are like, "Man, that's really cool. My dad had one like that."
Right.
They're becoming the next gen of classic
Isn't that
truck.
crazy? Like, shut up. It's just a 96, bitch. I'm not that old.
So, Doug, what the Godzilla's making from the factory, and then what's kind of an easy couple of throwing parts at it, kind of power and torque numbers, and then you can do the supercharger, of
Yeah.
course.
So uh, I don't remember the exact factory rating, but it's around 440 horse and 440 torque. And so, like when we build them, the control system we're using is from a guy up in Detroit. It's OBR Control Systems. He does his own calibration. He's a little more aggressive. He tells me at the crank they're probably 480, and we're running free flowing exhaust, 3-inch most of the way back. So we're probably up bumping up on 500 at the crank, and that's pretty much a bone stock motor that starts, runs, and drives just like bone stock. Now there's a couple options for cams out there now, which put them around 600, low 600s, and Mass Motorsports I think has maybe 3 options for cams now.
A cam
Yeah,
gets you in the
it's like
600 range.
so easy.
I mean, that's I mean, Will and I joke all the time. Today it's like
Yeah.
1,000's the new 400 or whatever. Like back in the day, 400 was a big number. Now it's like whatever, you got 1,000, big deal. But still, literally, especially for trucks. I mean, like, dude, how can you balk at an
Yeah.
easy cam swap making close to 600? You really don't need anything more
Yep.
than that. Like, and then of course
Right,
that's
right.
the
Yeah,
starting
we've got a truck going together that's 72 Ford F-250, so kind of the old dense or bump side Ford truck, and we're putting together a supercharged Godzilla. So we've got a hair up supercharger going on top. And this guy was like, it's just for fun. It's just for street. I don't do anything crazy, but we're going to make 700, 750. It's going on the dyno in about 2 weeks, I hope. So we'll get some numbers then. But yeah, I mean, it's pretty much a bone stock motor, slap a blower on it, and you're making mid sevens.
Wow.
I imagine they can do a lot more if you really, huff on them.
Yeah, if you get
With that much displacement, that's an easy 700.
Yep, there's a couple dyno sheets from Harrop that show them pushing 800-900 horsepower as long as you got, you can put some good pistons, some good rods in it. You're going to start working on it hard, but yeah, it's not hard to tickle those upper hundreds, and I'm sure there's plenty of race guys making over 1,000 with it, and even some street guys probably would be able to do without too much work.
So, how popular is this thing going to be, man? Price point, obviously not the mass production thing that an LS platform has become, but where do you see this thing kind of falling out at? There's so many people into resto mods nowadays. I feel like that is still an exploding outward trajectory, and it's becoming more and more popular. I think there's a definite home for this engine out there. How long before it's to scale of LS or Gen 3 Hemi stuff?
Well, I can tell you just from my experiences, my phone and my inbox are full. The The wait time is a little bit fuzzy because I never know quite how long it's going to take to build these things. But I'm telling people it's at least a year before I could take on any new project because I got
Wow.
like 6 in the queue and lots going on, and I'm like just overwhelmed. Almost every day I get inquiries, and we're not the cheapest shop around, and it's an expensive swap with a lot of expensive parts, but the guys that I tell, I'm like, I don't know, you want to do a resto mod, you want to do a powertrain conversion, we're going to go 75K to 100K and more, depends on what we're doing. And most are like, yeah, where do I send the deposit?
I
I'm
want to be that guy.
like,
There you go.
yeah. So the demand is huge. I think the parts supply, like I said earlier, is just kind of growing every month and making it easier. So more and more the DIY guys are getting out there, and that's really going to blow it up too, right? Because when the guys that are reasonably competent in the garage can put one together,
Right, right.
then you really start to see them on the streets everywhere.
Yeah, that's what we need is just those couple extra pieces. It sounds like the truck part, the truck side of things is fairly straightforward. Now you've been working on different um, kind of off-road, four-wheel drive specific parts and things like that, Doug.
Yeah, a little bit. So on the truck side, we have, you got to transmission choices I mentioned earlier are pretty good. They're all modern, kind of Ford automatics. We have a couple tricks we built with manual 5 speeds. We bought a Tremec TR 4050. So it's kind of a new 5-speed Tremec release for the truck guys. And then hanging off the back of the trans, you got to have a transfer case solution. So I've been working. We take an adapter from Advanced Adapter and we make our own modifications to it, so we can put like NP205s behind these things, which is the factory transfer case. So we're kind of doing that to solve that problem. A couple guys have run the Atlas transfer case, which is like the really nice professional level aftermarket transfer case, and that'll bolt up with some adapters as well. So, that stuff's all pretty much coming together. The bell housing solution was nice. We got that one in for the Tremix, and that really opened that market up to manual trans, 4-wheel drive guys. But yeah, we're kind of figuring out the recipes. We're trying to give guys, like I'm doing installation parts, so I make motor mounts. We're doing transmission mounts and adapters. I'm doing some of like the plumbing and the air inlet stuff that they need. Simple things like brackets for the ECU, just so they can. A lot of guys that can't weld, that's a big hurdle, right? They want to be able to buy a bracket they can bolt in and not have to weld
Right, right.
something in.
Where do people find it? Where do people find all this hardware you're making?
It's all on our website, wellsorted.com. It's growing. I just got a bunch of stuff from the powder coater today. I got to take some pictures and upload, and so it'll be evolving over the next couple weeks.
You said wellsorted.com?
Yeah, that's it. We're wellsorted.com. There's a tab on there to shop, and you can go see all of our kind of install parts that we're putting out there. It's mostly the Broncos right now, 78, 79 Bronco and F-Series truck, because that's what we've been doing the most of. But we're slowly growing beyond that as we get into more platforms.
All right. Hey, last man, do you think this, for so long, for so many years, every person you ran into when it came to an 04 truck was like, oh, what you need to do is put an old diesel engine in it. And they were doing diesel swaps on everything because it was the only thing that made decent power. You think this particular Godzilla platform is going to replace those old guys and their put a diesel in it answer? Oh, just put damn diesel in it. Just power stroke that thing.
Yeah, I was going to say the Power Stroke Army is alive and well, and they love those things. And I love diesel trucks too. So nothing against it. I think this gives you a viable alternative, right? Because the 460 wasn't a bad motor, but it just, you would never pass a gas station. And it made a couple hundred horse. You could tune it up a little more. But, I mean, Godzilla, you're talking 500 out of the box. That's not even working.
Wow.
So now you got big power. With the modern trans, the fuel efficiency is pretty good. You got a real competitor now to the Power Stroke in terms of the performance of the truck.
Yeah, man.
Man, I'd say, if you can get that DIY kind of parts list, so you're not buying a billet intake and that sort of stuff, you can get kind of like regular bolt-on cost parts. Man, you can't beat a diesel, except when it comes to price. So if you can get the bolt-on parts for that Godzilla, man, is that, to me, that just seems like the truck ticket. When you don't want to buy 2 tickets and get the diesel, you buy the one and get the gas engine, and man, 500-600 horsepower, a ton of torque. Yeah. That moves some stuff, man. The truck and most whatever you want behind you.
Well, look, man, speaking of moving stuff, we got to move it on and wrap this thing up. Where do people find you socially? Where do people keep in touch with you, what you're doing, what you're building, and some of this crazy stuff you got going on?
Yeah, the best way is probably Instagram. We're under Well Sorted Automotive. I have a YouTube channel under Well Sorted that we publish some little videos about the trucks we're building. So like our latest 96 Bronco's got some feature builds up there, and I'm a dorky engineer, so I tend to show people kind of the hows and the whys. So it's a little more around the how we do it, maybe a little less entertaining, but give it a look. And then our website, as I mentioned, wellsorted.com. You can hit us up there. We've got, contact buttons in our little shopping section, and just kind of all of our builds are covered there with pictures and info and things like that.
There you go, man. Always a good solution. And as always, just awesome to catch up with you. Happy and stoked for you and the family that it's moving well there in Atlanta for you. And again, as always, thanks for your time, man. It's greatly appreciated. Always cool to hear and pick your brain on what you're doing.
No problem, guys. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Don't forget our show every weekends on the Motor Trend Network. Check your local listings. It's also available on Motor Trend Plus, which is their streaming format. Easy way to find us there. Thanks to our guest, Doug DeLong. Really cool stuff they're doing there. Our producer, Scoop, executive producer, Bob Ecker. He's Kevin Bird, and I'm Willie B for the Two Guys Garage podcast.
Yeah, don't forget to check out our website, too, twoguysgarage.com. Share your thoughts with us. We're on social everywhere, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, at Two Guys Garage. Now, this Two Guys Garage podcast, it's copyrighted 2023, Brenton Productions Incorporated, all rights reserved. Man, I can't wait to hook up and get a ride in one of these Godzilla rides there, Dougie.
Yeah, they're fun, man. I don't know when I'm going to get up to Detroit, but maybe
I can't wait to line up and smash one in a Fox Body Mustang.
You got to build one of those too. You got to have an assault.
I was going to say, one of my first cars was a Fox Body, so I'm threatening I'm going to do it one of these years. Got to buy another one.
Was that a 96?
Swap it. What's that?
Was that a 96? What was that?
No, my first car was an 87 GT50.
Oh, the one you had up here in Detroit, though. What was that one?
That was a 94. That was a
94.
Yeah.
94.
Yeah, I got to build a Godzilla car now that I live where it doesn't snow.
Yeah, right.
Right on. Well, Dougie, thanks for coming on the show with us, man. Giving us the skinny. I can't wait to see what happens with Godzilla. I know it's big with some of the racers. It's big with the trucks. Let's see how far it can go.
Yeah, man. Thank you.
All right, guys. Hope you learned something. You know where to go. Doug's got your answers. Catch you on the next Two Guys Garage podcast.